Errol is a young boy living in a fantasy world where everyone receives a divine blessing in the form of a class from their goddess. Today's the big day, Errol's 10th birthday, and his family is buzzing with excitement over what class he'll get. His parents and sister can't stop speculating about how amazing it'll be, but Errol himself seems completely indifferent to the whole thing. After breakfast, they head to the church, where a priest stands by the altar, ready to assign classes to the waiting children. One by one, the kids step forward and receive their blessings. Some become blacksmiths, others chefs. Errol's sister explains that classes are often influenced by one's parents. So with a sword saint for a mother and an archmage for a father, he's practically destined for greatness. When Errol's turn finally comes, the crowd starts whispering excitedly, wondering what kind of legendary class this prodigy will get. Even the priest seems eager, though for some questionable reasons. He presses his hand to Errol's forehead, and nothing happens. The priest hesitates, tries again, and finally looks down with a mix of confusion and pity. Then he announces the unthinkable. Errol was born without a class. A few days later, his parents do their best to cheer him up, assuring him that he doesn't need to worry about finding a job. He can always live comfortably in their basement forever. But Errol isn't the least bit broken up about it. He tells them he's been training in swordsmanship since he was little, practicing tirelessly day and night. Sure, having the swordsman class would have made things easier, but he believes his raw effort and the harsh training under his ridiculously strong mother will be enough to carve his own path. His family, relieved to see his confidence, lets him go as he heads out to clear his head. Wandering near the training grounds, Errol hears the sounds of clashing blades. He spots two boys sparring, clearly rough around the edges, but their swordsman blessings alone give them impressive strength. As Errol watches quietly, they notice him staring and turn to ask why he's standing there. Errol calmly replies that he came to practice, which makes the boys burst out laughing. They mock him, saying a classless nobody has no right to spar with real swordsmen, then start swinging their blades around to show off. Errol watches their sloppy footwork, unimpressed, before asking if they'd like to spar with him instead. The boys think he's joking, but agree anyway, eager to humiliate him. Just before they start, one of them asks if Errol at least has divine protection. In this world, everyone is born with it. A sort of invisible shield that keeps you from dying, though it can break if your opponent's much stronger. Errol nods, confirming he has it, and the boys grin, ready to go all out. But Errol smirks and says he doesn't need divine protection to beat weaklings like them. That's all it takes to tick them off. The first boy charges at him, swinging his sword with everything he's got. Errol deflects the attack with almost no effort, leaving his opponent stunned. The boy starts slashing wildly, but Errol blocks and parries every blow like it's a warm-up drill. Desperate, the second boy joins in from behind, but Errol is already a step ahead. He leaps back, dodging the ambush with ease. Compared to his mother's brutal training, these two are like toddlers with sticks. Deciding a 2-on-1 might be more interesting, Errol lunges forward, slamming the pommel of his sword into one kid's chin, knocking him out cold. The other loses his footing, trips over his fallen friend, and eats dirt right after. Both start bawling about how unfair it was, sounding more like babies than fighters. That's when a sharp voice cuts through the noise. A red-haired boy steps into the ring, glaring at them. He tells the crying duo to shut up. If this were a battlefield, they'd already be corpses. Errol doesn't recognize him, but the boy clearly knows him. Marching up, the redhead challenges Errol to a duel, sneering that he only beat those two losers because of some special power inherited from his mother, the Sword Saint. But without a class, he adds, you'll never stand a chance against someone properly trained. He proudly introduces himself as the son of Captain Evans, leader of the village guards. Errol remembers the captain. His mother once helped the man, but this kid looks nothing like his rugged father. The redhead rants about how everyone calls Errol's mother the strongest, while his father never gets the same respect. To prove which family truly reigns supreme, he's going to defeat Errol here and now. The two take their stances, and the match begins. The red-haired boy wastes no time, rushing in aggressively, his blade flashing with intent to end it fast. But Errol's defense is solid. Years of sparring with his mother have trained him to stay composed under pressure. The two dart across the training field in a blur of strikes and counters, leaving the two fallen boys watching in awe. Despite his skill, Errol quickly realizes his opponent's fighting style is fueled by pure anger, making him reckless. Waiting for the perfect opening, Errol moves into counter, but the redhead anticipates it and leaps into the air, unleashing a pair of aerial slashes. Errol blocks the first, but the second lands squarely on his chest, sending him crashing to the ground. Shocked, Errol gasps, "What kind of trick was that?" The red-haired boy grins smugly. It's called a skill, something a classless loser like you could never learn. A couple of days have passed by since that loss, but a new fire has been lit inside Errol. He goes inside the forest with his sword and starts practicing on his own on a dummy target. And after countless tries, he finally manages to replicate the twin slash which defeated him last time. Before he could even celebrate though, a goblin ambushes him by jumping out of the bushes. But it is not a match for him, since Errol turns around, unleashing his twin slash technique, which immediately drops the goblin to the ground. He feels excited about his newly learned technique when suddenly a huge roar erupts from deep within the forest, which shakes Errol to the core. He immediately decides to run back to the village and alert the guards, but he overhears the shout of a boy as well, which stops him in his tracks. He realizes that the boy might be in trouble and it will be too late till the guards arrive. So, he decides to go into the forest himself. He walks quietly for a bit when he finally spots an injured boy who turns out to be the same red-haired guy who defeated him in training. The boy looks thoroughly beaten as he bleeds from all over his body, holding the sword up towards his enemy, who turns out to be a massive hobgoblin. Even Errol has never seen one in real life since they never come near the village. He wonders whether he should run for help since he doesn't know whether he is strong enough to defeat the monster, but he realizes that the red-haired boy would die for certain if he leaves. Errol finally makes up his mind and sneaks behind the hobgoblin. And just before the monster could finish the red-haired boy off, Errol unleashes a strong twin strike, which slashes through the goblin, killing him immediately. The boy is shocked to see the hobgoblin dead on the floor. But more than that, he is shocked at the fact that Errol managed to use an attack which he only learned after years of training and the boost from his class. Errol gives the boy some holy water for recovery, and immediately after, the boy asks Errol how he managed to do that. And Errol replies that his attack has nothing to do with having a class, as anyone with enough skill, speed, and power can replicate it. He explains that after losing to his twin slashes before, Errol analyzed it closely and practiced again and again to understand the basics. So now he can modulate the attack however he wants. The boy is still not convinced and challenges Errol to a match, which is gladly accepted. They both stand in front of each other and use their abilities at the same time. To the boy's surprise, not only did Errol manage to successfully block his slash, but he also added a third slash which hits the boy and knocks him to the floor. The captain's son is furious, but Errol explains that he isn't bound by any skill, which has limitations. So, his only limit is his power and skill, which means he can add as many slashes as he wants if he is good enough. The boy gets back on his feet and engages in another quick battle, but this time again he gets hit by the third slash stronger than before. He gets knocked to the ground once again as Errol claims the victory and walks off. 5 whole years pass by since that day, and our final decides to leave on a journey to Brea, the kingdom known for its swordsmanship. Both his mother as well as Captain Evans got their training from Brea, and Errol wants to be the best of the best, just like them. On his way, he is accompanied by a couple of strangers, 2 of them being swordsmen of a high caliber. The guy has the barbarian class, whereas the woman is known for her dual-wielding class. Both of them want to hone their skills in Brecha as well, but they can't seem to get along and are always at each other's throat. The cart driver tells them to settle down as all of them are going to the same location, but the man is too much of a misogynist and wants to send the woman back to the kitchen. Before they can argue more, however, the cart driver shouts at them to get their swords ready as they have got trouble. Errol calmly looks up and spots a horde of orcs alongside their huge leader blocking their way with no intentions of letting them leave with their lives. 2 of the kids in the cart get scared and ask the barbarian guy to save them. But the barbarian, true to her name, is a total jerk and a coward who claims that he is not willing to put his life on the line for someone else and jumps from the cart before running away. The woman follows him, claiming that everyone is on their own in this world. The cart driver gets worried, wondering whether he can outrun the horde with his cart and the passengers. But before he could do anything, Errol climbs down the cart without a single word and starts moving towards the monsters. The driver tells him to back off and run for his life, but Errol simply ignores him before dashing towards the first orc and stabbing it in the heart. The driver is shocked by his incredible speed and accuracy, while Errol simply uses instant transmission and keeps disappearing and appearing in front of the orc, taking them down one by one. Unfortunately, though, he gets surrounded by a bunch of orcs on all sides, which means that he can't really use his dash skill anymore. But to the driver's surprise, Errol uses a legendary trick known as the Blade Dance, where he spins around like an idiot, cutting everyone down all at once. The cart driver doesn't understand how Errol can use that skill since it is only used by the swordsmen with the Sword Princess class, and they are always women. Errol, however, isn't bound by the gender norms as he wants to be the part of the LGHDDV community. So, he runs towards the orc leader, dodging its attack expertly before jumping on top of him and burying his sword deep within the orc's skull, killing it immediately. He finally returns back towards the shock driver and tells him to continue the journey to Brea. While one of the kids asks what class he belongs to, he simply replies that he doesn't have any class, which completely shocks everyone. He remembers how 5 years ago when he showed his mother the new twin blade skill he learned, she thought that she was imagining things. But when Errol told her that he is training to replicate any skill he sees, she is beyond overjoyed and promised to teach him all of the skills used by the Sword Princess class. Back in the present, he is woken up by the driver who tells him that they have reached Bresta, the land of swords. Errol climbs down the cart and witnesses the town center flooded by people with swords strapped to their waists. Errol turns towards the driver and asks whether he is an advanced level swordsman. At first, the driver claims that he is just a cart driver, but Errol knows that only good swordsmen can identify the moves he was pulling on the spot. The cart driver admits that he is from the Holy Knights class, which is a pretty good class, but he gets bored of fighting so much. So, he prefers to sometimes kick back and relax while pretending to be a normal driver. The Holy Knight realizes that this is probably Errol's first time in the city and tells him that he needs to find a guild for himself first, as without a guild, he won't be able to fight in any tournaments. And in this city, fighting and winning the turns is the main way swordsmen prove their worth and earn money. Errol replies that he doesn't care about the money, but he wants to fight the strongest swordsman this place has to offer him. The driver tells him to be wary of toxic corporate guilds as they can suck your soul and not in a good way. With that, the driver turns back and leaves while Errol moves into the city, looking at all the different people announcing their guilds, hiring people and swordsmen getting in line to try their luck for the better guilds. On the way, he ends up bumping into a blonde lowly who immediately latches onto him like Headless, telling him that she is the member of a famous guild and wants him to join them. Errol is immediately wary of her since she seems very desperate for members, so he refuses. The lowly, however, doesn't leave him alone and keeps pestering him to join their guild again and again. But Errol's is not a simp and keeps refusing. He asks her what is the strongest guild here and begrudgingly replies that the Shadowblade Guild is one of the strongest right now since it has 8 class of swordsmen. He asks her for the directions and immediately moves towards the guild. He gets stopped on the way by the guard who directs him towards the reception for the test. In the reception, he finds a huge line of budding swordsmen willing to try their luck to enter the famous guild, which excites Errol as well, who wonders what kind of amazing people he would have to fight against. But when his chance comes to register, the receptionist laughs at him for being a classless loser, claiming that only people with an advanced swordsman class can apply for the guild trials. Errol claims that he is sure he can pass their trial, but the receptionist refuses to register him. Saddened by this, he decides to leave when he spots 3 of the ranked swordsmen entering the hall who are immediately treated like celebrities. He doesn't really care much about the theatrics though, and immediately turns towards other guilds. But one by one he gets rejected by all of them on the basis of him not having a class. Tired, he goes back into the city taking out the letter his mother gave him and told him to find her old guild since they will surely help her find something. He wonders whether his mom knew that he would have this much trouble, but he is thankful nonetheless. Before he can even read the letter though, the blonde lowly latches onto him once again, claiming that they are still ready to take him in. But Errol refuses again. She literally starts begging him to join the guild, telling him to do it as a charity, and points at a beautiful guild house, claiming that it's her guild. This surprises Errol a little, but the lowly replies that their guild known as the Dragon Fang used to be the best in the country for a very long time. But lately it's gone too, and currently they are the weakest, but she wants to bring it back up to its former glory. The name Dragon Fang suddenly rings a bell as he remembers that his mom once told him about the leader of her guild, who was a dual-wielding swordsman who named the guild Dragon Fang after his special move. He quickly takes out the letter to look for the name, and it in fact is the guild that his mom was talking about. He decides to go in with her, which makes her very happy. But the moment they enter the room, he finds an old drunk man with only one arm on the couch. The man tells Errol to go somewhere else since this guild is doomed, and walks off. While the lowly tells him that he is her father who used to be the second best swordsman of the city, but ever since losing his arm, he has never been the same. Errol, however, surprises her by saying that he wants to join the guild. This makes the lowly really happy, and she quickly drafts up an agreement, which Errol fills up and hands it back to her. She reads it before asking why he left the class column blank. That's when Errol replies that it's because he has no class. Bali snaps and gets a sword out, claiming that she thought he might be an advanced class swordsman since he was acting so hard to get. But before she could say any more, the door opens and a red-haired beauty named Ree enters the room. The lowly immediately runs towards her, crying that this classless idiot deceived her into joining the guild. This gets Ray's immediate attention, and she looks towards Errol, claiming that she never thought she would see him here. Errol is confused and asks how she knows him, and Ray looks surprised, claiming that they were from the same village and trained together. That still doesn't ring a bell. But finally, he realizes that the red-haired boy that he fought so many times before was actually not a boy, but a girl. The lowly knows about the story as well, and asks Ray whether this is the classless guy who defeated her when she was young, as she always thought that the story was a myth. Ree, however, is still stuck on that loss and challenges Errol to a match immediately. The fight starts, and Ree immediately uses the twin slash attack, which Errol thinks he can counter. But to his surprise, Ray slashes blast through his own and hit him straight in the chest. This confuses him, but Ree reveals that she has the power swordsman class, which is why she is able to use a sword that is 5 times heavier than a normal sword, which means that she has 5 times the power in each sword strike. Errol is impressed by the fact that she has still retained her speed even after using a heavier sword. But that speed is nothing in front of his own speed. The next time she attacks, he creates an after image of himself which distracts Ree while he appears behind her and hits her in the back. Ray is confused and tries again, but the result is the same. She can't believe that Errol is using a technique which is only used by the most advanced level swordsmen, while Errol realizes that she is too tanky to take down with his normal attacks. Ree also knows this and tries to end the fight with her heavy blows. But Errol uses his mother's signature counter, which brings Ree to her knees, and the fight is over just like that. With that, the Lee's demeanor changes completely, and she welcomes him once again to their guild and tells him that their guild is in crippling debt right now. To get out of debt, they will have to enter the tournaments and fight as a 3-man group against other guilds who will have all 5 members in a team. Errol, however, is excited at the prospect of fighting against strong opponents and looks forward for the opportunity to hone his skills even more. The next morning, Errol wakes up in his own room in a new bed, which now belongs to him. It takes him a little while to remember what all has happened since he arrived here. He now belongs to the same legendary guild which his mom worked with as well, which is a big thing for him. So he decides not to let her down and make this guild great again. He freshens up and walks into the living room where the lowly and Ree are both already up chatting by the fire about the upcoming tournaments. Lowly immediately grabs Errol into the conversation, claiming that the tournament is going to start next week, and since they now have 3 members instead of 2, they are eligible to take part in the tournament as well. She tells Errol that it's going to be super hard since it will be an elimination-style tournament with one-on-one matches, but every guild will probably have 5 members, which will put them at a huge disadvantage. So, they must defeat more than one opponent each if they want to survive even the first round. The lully is pretty optimistic, though, claiming that it should still be fine since their guild already has 2 B-rank swordsmen. So, unless and until they don't end up fighting in a ranked swordsman, they should be equally matched in the fights. Errol is a little new to the concept and asks what exactly these ranks mean. The lowly explains that there are 5 total ranks from a TD, where it is the highest rank achievable, and out of 20 swordsmen in Brescia, only 20 are deemed to be a rank, whereas D rank is the rank of a complete beginner who only knows how to hold a sword. She proudly claims that both her and Ree are B rank swordsmen themselves. And since Errol managed to defeat Ree in a straight fight, that means he is also a B-ranked swordsman just like them. Considering that they have 3 B-ranked swordsmen, they should have a good chance fighting the starting rounds at least. With that, the lowly goes into the kitchen, leaving Errol to his thoughts. While Ray was leaving, though, he grabs her and asks about her abilities as a power swordsman. She still seems to be annoyed by her loss yesterday, but replies that one of her abilities is to harden up her outer mana shield to protect her from most of the low-powered attacks. Errol thinks about it for a while, wondering how exactly can he learn such a valuable technique when suddenly he comes up with an idea. He tells Ree to hit him with her sword still sheathed. Ree tells him that she is not interested, but Errol grabs her hand, pleading with her to do it. But Ray seems to be getting the wrong idea, thinking that Errol is in some kinky but she is not completely opposed to the idea and tells him that maybe they should start with something more normal. Errol doesn't respect the baddie in front of him, realizing that they are both thinking different things, and clears it up that he wants her to hit him so he can learn how to use the skill to harden up her mana protection shield, which would be the most effective when fighting against multiple attackers, as you are more likely to get hit in such situations. She is shocked by this and asks whether he has gone insane since skills are only given by the divine grace of the goddess and is something which cannot be learned. But Errol is an atheist now and tells her to shut her trap since he already learned skills like Twin Blade Slice and Instant Transmission. This shuts Ray up, who gives in and decides to try it out once. They go into the training ground where she hands him her sword, warning that her sword is 5 times heavier than any normal sword. And without the brute strength skill, Errol will never be able to swing it. But Errol once again shuts up the feminist by grabbing her sword, unshathing it, and swinging it with surprising grace and ease. Ray is again left speechless, asking how the hell is he able to do all this while being classless and without any skills. Errol replies that whatever he has learned through dedication and daily practice. He vows to match their talent by pure hard work and effort. This changes Ray's heart, and she apologizes for her comments before taking back the sword and agreeing to the training, but warning him that she won't be holding back. Errol agrees and tries to flirt, but that moment has passed, and the baddie smacks him in the face with her sheathed sword. A little while later, the lowly comes running down to the training ground, breathless and stressed, and tells Errol and Ree that she just found out which guild they are up against, and it's not good news. She tells them that the group they are up against is none other than the members of the top guild, Blackblade, which is over a ranked swordsman led by their leader, Geo, who is known to be as vicious as a viper. But the lowly has no plans of backing down either, and with a fiery speech tells them that they will do their best to defeat their candidates. She then looks down at Errol, who is down on the ground after being battered by Ree during the training session. The lowly asks whether Errol is dead, but Ree replies that they are just doing some special training. But the lowly thinks that Ray is just venting out her stress on the newbie. Errol finally gets up, claiming that he is hungry after getting beaten up so much and wants some grub. A week flies by during the training, and finally the day of the competition arrives. People from all over the country gather at the Coliseum discussing the match, while Errol is completely blown by how huge the venue actually is. The lowly overhears people claiming that the dragon fangs crashed and burned, which flares her temper, but Ree manages to stop her. Errol realizes that people also gamble here, putting money on which teams are going to win, and the lowly tells him that currently the odds in their fight are 20-1. Errol claims that it's pretty impressive, but lowly shouts at him to shut up since it means no one in the entire city believes that they can win against the Blackblade Guild. But this can also be a blessing in disguise, since if they manage to win, they can get away with loads of money from a single match. Ree tries to calm her down, but she is too far gone, as with a fire burning in her eye. She claims that they have to win this match no matter what, because if they lose, there will be no guild anymore, and to make sure that they become super rich after their match, she has taken a loan by putting the guild house as a collateral. So, if they win, their lives will be changed forever and no one would talk about them as a crappy guild, which used to be good. Ree asks, what if they lose though? And the lowly replies that it doesn't even matter, cause if they lost, they would have lost everything anyways. Suddenly, she gets called out by a guy who turns out to be none other than Geo, the leader of the Blackblade Guild, who starts belittling the lowly and explains that it was him who pulled a few strings to make it so the very first match is between their guilds. It's going to be an easy fight for them, which they are bound to win, and alongside that they can completely diminish the last embers of the guild, which used to be the best once upon a time. He tells her not to worry though, as if she manages to win, that would mean that she has the best guild. But that would only happen if she manages to defeat their ranked swordsman. But with a classless loser in their team, it doesn't look likely. With that, he laughs at his own ingenuity and bids them good luck before walking off. Soon, they enter the arena where Errol realizes that Geo himself doesn't seem to be fighting and wonders whether that increases their chances of winning. But Ray tells him that their entire team is a ranked, so it doesn't matter. Plus, their current lineup seems to be more aggressive than usual. Finally, the time for battle arrives, and the announcer introduces the contestants from the side of Blackblades. A green-haired boy with a fencer class is sent forward, who haughtily declares that he will defeat the entire opposing team. While the commentator gets surprised when he sees that from the side of Dragon Fangs, Errol, the classless swordsman, is going to fight. The fencer boy seems disinterested since it wouldn't matter how quickly he defeats a classless idiot, but decides to do it anyways since then he can match up against the girls. The match starts, and within seconds, the fencer bloke dashes and stabs Errol through the chest, surprising everyone with his speed. But while Loli gets worried about Errol, Ree tells her to look carefully, as it turns out that it was simply Errol's shadow. The fencer seems surprised, but it doesn't faze him, and he turns around and lunges again, only to find another after image. He realizes that this is not going to be over as quick as he would have hoped, as he gets surrounded by images of Errol. But it doesn't matter to him, as he plans to use his speed to stab them all. The after images all attack at once, and the fencer slashes through them all only to get stabbed by the real Errol, who managed to produce 3 after images, which is supposed to be really difficult. The fencer falls to the ground, and the match is over just like that. Errol claims that his mother used to practice with him while using 5 images at once, and that was her going easy. The commentator is shocked as the public erupts with cheers for the classless candidate. He realizes that even though he tried the exact same technique as the fencer boy, his wasn't as refined, which means he would have to work upon it even more. The next match Errol faces is against a dual wielder who pushes on the attack with a constant barrage of sword strikes. But Errol manages to block them all before using the twin slash attack to take his opponent down. With 2 down, the next opponent he faces turns out to be a reverse grip dagger wielder, who is more careful in his step and uses a bunch of martial arts techniques alongside his blade. But that was of no use since Errol is too fast for him and confuses him with the after images before striking him down from behind. Ree and Loli are both shocked by the fact that this man just defeated 3 ranked swordsmen without breaking a sweat in record time, which actually fills the Loli with hopes of actually winning the match. The next match turns out to be a little more difficult since he is matched up against the shield swordsmen, who are known to be tough, and since Errol can't land any critical hits, he is forced to dance around and slowly wear down his protection bit by bit. His opponent screams at him that he can't possibly be a classless person, but Errol replies that whatever he has achieved, it's through sheer hard work and nothing else. The brute tells him that hard work won't take him very far when up against talent as he rushes forward with his shield bash skill, but Errol manages to use one of his mother's signature technique of foresight. As he predicts his enemy's movements and manages to kick the shield down with that, he uses the technique he learned from his last opponent, the martial arts guy, and kicks the brute in the stomach. He then picks up the shield and starts moving forward. The brute gets enraged and tries to attack, but Errol manages to parry before dashing forward and using the same shield bash to destroy his opponent. People start rioting and calling him a liar who isn't disclosing his rank and class. So, the organizers bring in his class ID towards the magic crystal ball and broadcast live that he indeed is a classless person. With that out of the way, the next opponent is announced who seems to be different. This swordsman is named Masamune, and he turns out to be of the samurai lineage from the east with a curved sword called a katana. Before Masamune even takes his sword out, Errol senses the danger and gets ready, knowing that this fight won't be as easy as the others. He realizes that Masamune is planning to use his ultimate skill and like a snake is waiting to strike. But Errol is curious, so he moves forward, putting himself in danger. The moment he enters the swordsman's range, Masamune snaps out his sword towards Errol. But somehow Errol is faster and disappears behind him. Masamune is shocked, but Errol tells him that he genuinely is the fastest person he has seen in the city. But unfortunately for him, his own mother was much faster, so he is used to it. With that, he uses the sword princess's ultimate skill, stabbing his enemy multiple times, defeating him. With that, everyone is shocked into silence as the supposed weakest member of the weakest guild just clean sweep the strongest members of the strongest guilds. Errol walks off towards Ray and the lowly, feeling content about the fact that they should have earned enough money to keep the guild going. That evening, when they returned back to the guild house, they immediately started celebrating with drinks all around. Errol was still shocked at the fact that the lowly was old enough to drink, but she claimed that she is a grown woman. Even if she looks a little small, she still can't believe that Errol single-handedly defeated 5 ranked swordsmen of the best guild in the country all alone. She decides that she must try to woo him as he is her ticket to get out of poverty and obscurity. She tries to ask his hand in marriage, claiming that she can fulfill all his desires, but Errol is a true Sigma and rejects her outright, claiming that he would prefer someone like Ray instead. This immediately makes Ray blush as she gets up from her seat, yelling at Errol to stop saying like that just because he wants to turn Loli down. But Errol was seriously considering it. He asks why she would think that he is making fun of her, and she replies that when they were young, he called her a man during the sword fight. She claims that anyone who met her has said that she has no womanly charms. But Errol can see two big womanly charms right there in front of him and begs to differ. LOL realizes that Ray has absolutely no idea what her biggest strength is and how exactly she could use it, so she doesn't really need to worry about her. With that, she starts rubbing Errol's legs, claiming that he must be tired from all the fighting during the day, and tells him to meet her in the bedroom. Ree immediately gets embarrassed, telling Loli to stop saying weird things. But the Lully smiles slightly, claiming that she is just going to give him a well-deserved massage after a tiring day. To her surprise, though, Errol replies that he would rather have a massage from Ray. His idea of a massage was getting pummeled to a pulp by Ray in the training ground as he tries to master the reinforcement magic that Ray uses, so effortlessly thanks to her class and skills. Loli watches from the balcony, wondering whether Errol has any idea what a massage actually is. The constant ruckus ends up waking Lai's father, who comes down to the training ground completely hungover, complaining about the noise, claiming that they don't need to let out the frustration of losing the tournament even before it began in the middle of the night. Lai, however, tells him that they in fact won their match, which was against the current best guild. This grabs his attention, but he thinks that the Black Blade must have sent their rank B or C newbies as cannon fodder. But Loli surprises him even more by saying that all their opponents were a tear. And not only that, but Errol defeated them all on his own without any help. This shocks her dad out of his hangover as he looks at Errol, bruised and battered, wondering if this kid is really that strong. LOL claims that she made a bunch of bets, and because Errol clean sweep the enemy team, she hit the jackpot. And now, not only are they out of debt, but also have enough money to cover their operating costs. Her dad, however, is not so optimistic, claiming that if by some luck, this kid is actually that strong, he would soon get poached by bigger, more influential, and richer guilds, so she shouldn't get her hopes high. Loli tells him not to worry about that since she is soon going to marry Errol, which means that they would be bound for life. Errol announces that he is not going to do anything like that, but soon turns his attention towards her father, claiming that Loli might be a thick-headed dip, but at least she is not a loser who gives up on everything. This was a clear dig at Lai's dad, who looks at him dangerously. But Errol doesn't get the hint and continues that he should stop with his moping act and start acting more his age since he still has one remaining hand and can wield a sword in that hand. This triggers her dad, who immediately grabs Errol by the collar, telling him to avoid speaking on subjects he has no clue about. He tells Errol that a dual-wielding swordsman who can't dual-wield is nothing but a waste of oxygen. Errol claims that he doesn't agree since he himself is a classless swordsman who is still competing and trying to rise in this world. With that, her dad pushes him away and walks back upstairs. Lai and Ree immediately come to Errol's side, asking if he is okay. And Loli apologizes for her dad's behavior while thanking Errol for speaking up. Errol claims that even after losing his arm and being washed up for so long, her dad is still incredibly strong, and it's a waste that he is refusing to use his incredible strength and experience. He thinks to himself about all the cool skills he could learn from a dual-wielding swordsman and promises to himself that he will motivate Lai's father, Rod, to take up the sword once again. LOL hears about his bid to learn new skills and suggests that he take on some of the dungeons near the city. Errol is completely oblivious about dungeons, so Ray tells him that dungeons are underground caves where monsters spawn in the hundreds, and the entire place is full of traps, making it one of the best places to learn new skills and level up with more real-life battle experience, which would help them during the Sword God Cup. Errol has no idea what she is talking about, so she explains that the city every year hosts a tournament where the best swordsmen in the country participate to show their skills and prove that they are the single best swordsmen in the country. Loli immediately takes out a form and tells Errol to fill it if he wants to participate. But to Ray's horror, he rips it up right in front of them. Ree is confused and asks whether he doesn't want to participate in the contest. But Errol replies that Loli was trying to pull a fast one on him and gives him a marriage certificate to sign instead. The Loli laughs, claiming that she was just testing the waters. But Errol is done being a good boy and grabs her in a rear-naked choke to teach her a lesson. The next morning, Errol wakes up to find Loli trying to assault him, but he dodges her and ties her to the bed before leaving. Later that day, They all go towards the dungeons together, where Loli explains that everyone gets to stand in the teleportation circles through which they can teleport to the dungeon level that they want, but you can only go to the levels which you have been to before. Loli claims that she has reached level 12. While Ray has reached 14, Errol immediately decides to go alongside Ree to the 14th level. But Loli claims that it doesn't work that way, and he needs to be physically present at the level to be able to go there again. That was a bummer since Errol wanted to fight the strongest monsters he could find from the outset. But the Loli tells him not to worry as she knows a really short route, which will lead them to the lower floors very quickly. They agree to the plan, but Loli tries to get Errol all alone, claiming that Ray can continue her level 14 run since Errol wouldn't need two guides, and starts dragging him away. But Errol is not so easily manipulated and asks Ree to come with them. They enter the first floor where they are immediately attacked by two knights in armor. Errol draws out his sword and starts clashing with one of them, while Ray takes the other one. He is surprised to notice that even after having heavy armors, the knight move with incredible agility, but it's nothing he can't deal with. So he uses his dash step and chops off the knight's head, only to realize that the entire armor is empty and is getting powered by the mana of the dungeon itself. The knight starts moving again, even without its head, and reclaims that they have no real weakness and don't feel pain either. So Errol decides to go for the legs, which works out beautifully as the magic knights collapse on the ground. Ree also deals with her opponent, claiming that they will soon regenerate, so they need to move on. Before moving further though, Errol asks Loli what her class is, and she very proudly claims that she is a fencer and promises to teach him anything he wants in the training ground or in the bed. But Errol rejects her once again and moves on. Before entering the second level though, they hear cries of help coming from the door, and when they move closer, they find a man covered in blood, kneeling on the floor and begging for help. Ray suggests taking him above ground, but the man refuses, claiming that his friends are still inside and they got badly hurt by a booby trap. He begs them to help rescue his friends, but Loli immediately gets down to business, asking for money in return for help. To her surprise, the man even pays her a good sum from the money he won gambling. But Errol senses something wrong. While walking behind the man, he notices that whenever he lost blood like that, he can't even sit on his own without holy water, let alone walk all the way back to a dangerous room. He realizes that the blood and the injuries are completely fake, but decides to keep this information to himself just because he thinks this might lead to something interesting and fun. The man takes them to a secret room where they find a trail of blood and a puddle in the center with one singular gold coin. The sight of the coin immediately entices Loli, who goes to pick it up when a teleport circle appears beneath them. Ree realizes that this was a setup while the man grins at them, claiming that he got paid well to just do such an easy job. But to his surprise, the magic circle teleported him alongside the others. They all emerge on a floor which even Ray has not seen, meaning that it's even lower than the 14th floor, but no signs of strong enemies yet. The guy who pretended to be hurt was shaking from fear as he stammered that this is supposed to be the lowest floor on the dungeon where the advanced sword god can be found. Suddenly, a knight with rainbow enchanted armor appears in front of them, but Loli refuses to believe the story of the sword god class, which everyone thought was just a myth. Errol, however, realizes the trouble that they are in and immediately pushes Loli down as the sword god sends an aerial slash so strong that it breaks the dungeon walls. Without wasting any time, the sword god attacks Errol, who barely manages to get his sword up in time, blocking the attack. Even though he gets shoved into the wall, he realizes that he survived that just because of the reinforcement magic training he got from Ray. He tries slashing back at his opponent, but the knight is extremely quick and uses all of the advanced moves to dash back. With that, he smiles, claiming that this is a good opportunity to test himself. This completely shocks his party while he uses the same divine step technique to close the distance and pushes on the attack, hitting the knight with a barrage of strikes which gets blocked. The knight is forced to back off, but uses a skill which causes gravity in the room to increase, forcing the others on the floor. But Errol easily maintains his stance since he has faced the same thing before when he was younger. Training against his mom, he used all his strength back then just to be able to stand. So when his mom attacked, he wasn't able to do anything. But this time, it's different. He uses the gold coin to nullify the attack, which creates a small opening, and Errol uses it to its full potential. Using one of his strongest abilities called Infinite Break, the knight shatters into pieces after that attack, shocking everyone present in the room. He regains his strength with some holy water, and then all of them safely exit the dungeon through the teleportation spell. Back in the bar, Rod was again drinking when he overhears a conversation between three young idiots talking about how they tricked the new members of the Dragon Fong Guild into a trap and they are most likely never coming back. Rod walks up to them and breaks their table with a single punch, ordering them to reveal everything that they know, but he is interrupted by Jorg, who calls him a good-for-no drunkard. Rod immediately realizes that this must have been set up by Jorg, which means the chances of her daughter's survival are slim to none. Completely broken, he lunges towards Jorg, but gets pushed aside like a peasant while he kneels on the ground, wishing he could save his little girl. But a sudden voice from the door catches his attention, and he turns around to see Loli alongside Errol and Ray enter the tavern, talking about how hungry they are. Loli notices her dad and the ugly Jorg, but gets surprised when Rod hugs her tightly, thanking God for making sure her daughter was safe. Recalls Jorg out, claiming that they got all the information out of his crony, who confessed that it was all Jorg's plan. But just like any politician, he straight up refuses to admit it, claiming that everyone is responsible for their own safety in the dungeons. And Errol thinks that it is a valid point. Rod tells Jorg that he won't get away with this, but Jorg simply calls him a drunkard, washed-up piece of trash, and moves out of the room while Errol wonders what new tricks he will have to deal with now. A couple days pass by, and now Loli gets a scroll which has all the preliminary brackets for the tournament. To her horror, she turns out to be in the same bracket as Errol, which immediately crushes her spirits, as it means that she definitely has absolutely zero chances of winning the prelims and actually representing her guild in the main tournament. Errol is a little confused about the concept of prelims, so Ray tells him that since the Sword God tournament inspires and attracts such a huge amount of aspiring swordsmen, it's almost impossible to take them all into the main tournament. So, the city organizes the prelims with different brackets based on a dice roll. It's complete luck who faces who is in the bracket, and the winner from each bracket gets a direct ticket to the main tournament. Errol checks the scroll which Ree was reading and notices that she is in a different group than her. She thanks the god for that since she would have no chances sizing up against Errol. Anyways, she starts praying to the god to help her clear the prelims without much trouble. While Errol pokes fun at her for having daddy issues, the Loli interrupts them, claiming that they need to return back to the dungeons for training. But Errol is too bored of the dungeons at this point and wants to dip. Loli, however, tries to act cute, telling him that she needs a strong man to defend her in case things go south. May realizes how pathetic Loli is and plans to teach her a thing or two about being independent. But before they could leave, Rod appears in the room, acting a little too dramatic as he grabs his daughter, telling her to be extra safe, as they never know when Jorg will decide to strike again. LOL could see the fear in her dad's eyes, so she solemnly agreed to play it safe before walking out. Rod turns around and finds Errol silently judging him, but Rod claims that he still has time to pull his act together and be more of a protective dad to her daughter. Errol, however, simply smiles, claiming that it's never too late to be a nice person, and leaves. A couple weeks pass by, and finally the day of the prelims arrives. The matches start while the audiences cheer from the ramparts as the fighters clash against each other in a flurry of sparks and sword strikes. Slowly but surely, the group starts to thin out as people get eliminated, and even Loli loses her match before even coming across Errol. She broods in the corner, sad about the results since she at least hoped to reach the finals this time around. But Errol doesn't care about his feelings, claiming that she was worried for no reason about not winning the prelims because they were in the same bracket since she would have lost anyways. That leaves Loli even sadder than before. But she pulls herself together and tells him to keep his guard up, even if he is really strong since the other finalist of their group has some special tricks up her sleeve. Errol, however, doesn't seem to be too bothered and replies that he has already seen almost all the tricks from his fights inside the dungeons, so he doubts this opponent would surprise him. The Loli, however, isn't so sure as she replies that this red-haired swordsman is actually a magic swordsman who can use their magic spells to reinforce their swords with mana and extra power. This was an interesting, as Errol wouldn't have expected the city to allow the use of magic in a tournament based on being the best swordsman. Loli replies that it doesn't matter what your class is. You only need to be part of a guild in order to enter the tournament. With that, the announcer calls for Errol and Lowly bids him luck. He walks up the arena and comes face to face with the red-haired girl who straight up tells him that she is a magic swordsman and it is an accepted class. So, she doesn't want to hear him and moan about how the fight was unfair because of her magic. Errol straight up tells her that he doesn't mind and the best fighter would win the match. With that, the announcer starts the match and immediately the red-haired girl starts throwing fireballs at him. Errol pulls a matrix and dodges the attacks one by one while deflecting and slashing through the rest. The Magic Swords girl, however, seems to have an endless pool of mana as she continues her barrage. But Errol dodges and weaves through the attacks to get up close and personal. He immediately tries to strike her down, but the girl manages to block him while using another fireball to force him back. Errol starts getting a feel of her skills and comments that it must be pretty convenient to be able to switch from close range to long range attacks at will. She boasts about how she is gifted and a classless loser like him could never defeat her. But Errol replies that she isn't a master of any of those two disciplines, even if she knows the basics of both. This really pisses her off, and she promises to make him eat his words as she uses her magic to imbue the fire into her blade, making it a flaming sword, claiming that only a true magic swordsman class person can wield something like this. With that, she swings her sword, causing the flame to chase after Errol, who calmly sidesteps and slashes against it. But even he is having trouble making sense of where the next attack is going to come because of her erratic movements. He acknowledges her talent, claiming that she must have practiced a good bit. But soon he stands in one place and absolutely schools her on what actual mastery looks like as he starts deflecting the flame attacks without even moving an inch from his position. He claims that even if her basic swordsmanship was better than the lowly, she could have been so much more effective and troublesome. But at this level, she is barely better than NPCs. This utterly embarrasses the girl, and as she loses her cool, Errol uses that opportunity to send a twin slash her way, which utterly extinguishes her flame, shocking her. Before she could even make sense of what just happened, he uses his blink step to appear behind her and smacks her in the head with his pummel, knocking her out. The crowd erupts with cheers as the judges announce Errol as the winner of the fourth block. But all he was thinking is how to master and apply the skills that he just saw this girl use. A few days pass by after that, and finally the day of the final tournament arrives. Lowly goes back to the guild house to wake up her father as she insists him to watch the tournament with her so they can cheer on both Errol and Ree, who both won their blocks and are in the main tournament. Her father doesn't even open his eyes and tells her to go by herself as he doesn't really care about it. LOL tries to rage bait him, asking whether he is scared he will see Jorg there. Rod immediately gets triggered, telling her that he isn't scared of Jorg, but soon he comes back to his senses. And in a moment of vulnerability, he tells his daughter that he tried picking up his sword yesterday, and he realized that he is so rusty at this point that he might not even win the Sword God tournament. This pisses the crap out of Lowly, who couldn't even qualify the prelims, let alone dream about winning Sword God tournament while calling herself rusty. She tells him that he should think about how he can still match the fighters in the finals for the tournaments, while other swordsmen who train their entire lives can't even qualify the first match. Finally, Rod agrees to go, and on the way to the stadium, he thinks about how he trained Ree when he used to have both arms instead of being a one-armed mess. He thought about those moments warmly and wondered how Ree would perform since she is his oldest student at this point and he is really connected to her. Back in the tournament, Ree seems to be losing her nerves as she shakes her legs anxiously. Looking at the ground, she gets scared by Errol, who asks whether she is scared that they might meet one another in the very first match. This seems to make her forget about her fears as she tries to hit him. But Errol grabs her punch just as the judges announce that the first match is going to be Jor, the defending champion, against Errol, the classless phenom who is surprising everyone with his lossless run till now. He gets up to leave, but Ree grabs his hand, bidding him good luck. With that, Errol moves into the arena where Lowly calls out to him, telling him to kick Jorg's ass and tear it into 64 pieces. But the moment Errol spots Jorg walking out into the arena, he immediately realizes that something is wrong. Jorg's eyes have turned purple, he has grown fangs and a horn, looking like he just sold his soul to the demon. Errol's spidey senses starts tingling as he realizes that this guy could be dangerous. But Rod immediately realizes what's happening. He notices the sword Jorg is holding and warns Errol to back off as he is holding a sword with a very powerful demon trapped inside it. Jorg's voice seems different as he speaks up, claiming that he didn't think anyone would recognize him. LOL is confused since Jorg should know who Rod is, but Rod replies that the demon itself seems to have possessed Jorg at this point. which means that Jorg is not in control of anything. Rald claims that the sword is supposed to be the original sword used by the sword god who defeated the Demon King. But before dying, the demon cursed the sword, because of which it was supposed to be locked away in the royal repository. The demon smiles, claiming that he was sealed away for hundreds of years. But he stayed patient as he knew that one day someone would come to free him, and claims the power for themselves. And that's exactly what happened with Jorg. He announces to everyone in the stadium that he is the demon named Gilda, the destroyer of mankind. This brings even Ree outside, who claims that she always thought that Gilda was just a myth, a legend to scare children, the demon who became powerful enough to destroy the entire planet itself. Chaos and fear ensues as the commoners recognize his name and start running away from the stadium, causing a stampede. Gilda, however, enjoys the sound of humans screaming for their life and isn't going to let them run away so easily. So he creates a magic circle beneath him, covering the entire stadium into a dome of magical energy, capturing and locking the people inside. He laughs at the horror he is causing, claiming that the screams of humans is like music to his ears, and he is going to enjoy that while slaughtering them all. To his surprise, Errol doesn't move from his position and in fact has his sword drawn out. Gelda tells him to run for his life, but Errol claims that he is confident that he could beat him since he has been beaten before once, which means that he is not invincible. The demon laughs, claiming that the last time he was defeated by a sword god, and as per Jorg's memory, there is no sword god alive at this point of time. Errol retorts back that there is still a sword god alive, which is his own mother, and that he can still defeat him without being a sword god. The monster can't help but laugh, but soon his laughter stops as Errol dashes in for an attack, forcing the demon to back off before counterattacking. Errol dances away from the attacks while the demon stands there shocked, realizing that this boy just used the divine step technique, which only the sword gods use. Errol, however, doesn't stop and keeps using that technique, attacking the demon from multiple positions. But the demon simply smiles, claiming that Errol forgot that he is in the body of a sword emperor, which means that Errol's attacks aren't causing him much damage. With that, the demon jumps up and hits Errol on the shoulder, smashing him to the ground, thinking that the boy is done for. He is shocked, however, when the dust clears as Errol seems to have absorbed the attack without much damage thanks to his training with Ray. This shakes Geldo a bit, who goes in for an attack. But Errol calmly swats him away before counterattacking with his own infinite break attack, slashing and hacking at the demon from multiple directions, completely overwhelming him in a flurry of attacks. This triggers Gilda's PTSD, as he has no doubt that Errol is using all the attacks of a sword god. But he can't believe that a mere boy could be a swordsman of that level. Before he could come up with a plan though, Errol uses a strong slash to finish the demon off, who falls to the ground in a cloud of dust. Everyone cheers for Errol, thinking that he has defeated the demon god. But Gilda wasn't dead, yet since his actual body was still the sword and all the damage was done to Jorg's body, he quickly starts looking around for a new host and immediately jumps towards Rod. Errol manages to push Ray away from the path, while Rod jumps in front of his daughter to protect her. When the dust clears, however, Rod stands there with the demon's sword in his hand and grabs Loli, putting the blade on her throat. Errol curses himself for not realizing that he needed to attack the sword, not Jorg's body, to defeat him, but it's too late now. He tells Errol that if he moves a single inch, Loli is dead, but Errol freely moves around, telling him that he can't kill Loli. Ree doesn't know why he is provoking a literal demon, but when Gelda tries to kill Loli, the hand refuses to move. Errol claims that Rod is much stronger than Jorg ever was, so possessing him wouldn't be that easy. Rod plunges the sword into the ground, freeing Loli, while Gelda tries to fight back and take control. Rod, however, is too much for him and manages to free himself from the demon's grasp, throwing the sword at Errol, who slashes it to dust, killing the demon once and for all. A couple of days passed by since that horrific incident, but it turned out to be a boon for Lee's guild. Ever since Errol won the Sword God Cup, it became common knowledge that Dragon Fong is on the mission of claiming their former status as being the strongest guild in the city. Hearing this, loads of aspiring new swordsmen started registering for the guild, expecting to be trained by the Sword God Cup winner, Errol himself. Unfortunately for them though, they got a teacher much more experienced and much stricter than Errol in the form of Rod, who got transformed after the last incident and got his confidence back. He starts training the new guild members ruthlessly with the same passion that he had before. He sparred alone against all the new recruits, beating the crap out of them and training them till they couldn't even stand anymore. One of the new recruits ended up hiding behind a pillar, but Loli saw him and confronted him. She claimed that they only took him in their guild because he promised to give his all and train with full dedication. The recruit looks down to the ground, muttering that he never expected Rod himself will train them with his diabolical regime. He then asks Loli whether Errol would also train them soon, but the Loli lets out an exasperated sigh, claiming that Errol ended up dropping out of the guild after his victory in the Sword God Cup. She cries about how even Ray ended up following him in the hopes of stopping him. But now both of them are gone for the time being, and she has no idea when will they come back, if they ever come back. Meanwhile, Errol is already in the forest traveling in the cart of the same adventurer who brought him to this city. The driver is surprised to see Errol leave the city of Brestus so soon, especially after winning the Sword God Cup, which basically made him a celebrity. Errol calmly replies that since he won the Sword God Cup, which is supposed to be the competition of the strongest swordsman, that means that he has already defeated the best that Brea had to offer, which means that he has no reason to stay here anymore. The driver is confused since there is still plenty of reason to stay in the city of swordsmen, especially if you have the title of being the strongest in the city. Errol, however, doesn't want to stagnate in a place which can't challenge him. The driver then asks why exactly is he returning back to his village and wonders whether he was getting homesick. But Errol replies that he simply wanted to test his skills against the best and see how far he has come with his training. The driver is confused, but Errol claims that he wants to see whether he could defeat his own mother in a sparring match. Now, a little while later, he finally reaches his village and tries to sneak into his own house and surprise his mother, who is picking up some flowers. But his mother is too experienced and immediately senses him coming and calls his name out. Errol is surprised, but he smiles knowing that he got caught by the words strongest fighter and not some talentless woman. His mother turns around and eyes him up and down, claiming that he seems to have gotten a decent bit of experience under his belt. Now Errol replies that he managed to win the Sword God Cup, and his mother seems delighted to hear that, as she claims that now they have two people in the family who won that competition. Errol smiles at that, but within the blink of an eye, his mother disappears and reappears in front of him, holding a flower to his face, asking whether they smell good. Errol is shocked at this, realizing that he would have been done for if that flower was a sword, which means that he still needs much more training if he aspires to ever reach the level of his own mother in terms